Well, hello again, traders, and welcome back. This is Ankit from Maverick Currencies here, and this is a quick video on the Canadian dollar outlook. We have 24 or less than 24 hours for this next Bank of Canada rate hike. That's scheduled tomorrow at about 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is again a good time to take a look at Canadian dollar in general, take a look at see how things have been moving, and what should we expect from this upcoming rate hike, and what should we expect in the following price action. So this year again has been a remarkable year, and if you look at the rate hikes, we have seen consistent rate hikes from Bank of Canada, but what we are noticing right now is that the rate hikes are not resulting into a higher Canadian dollar. So this is where going to a rate hike tomorrow, one of the things we really need to pay attention to is what the Canadian dollar is doing. So what the sentiment is into a currency, and what should we expect? Should we expect a breakout further, or should we expect a further breakdown to the downside? So the expectation tomorrow is for another rate hike for 0.75%, which again will bring the target rate to 4%. So the question is that a new news? Is that something that's already priced in? And again, this is at this point, a lot of the price action is already priced in. Again, this is not a surprise to the markets that the Bank of Canada is scheduled to raise rates. So the big movements happen when there's a surprise and when there's a strong guidance for further rate hikes. So if you really look back this year, this is where actually looking back in time, you can kind of get a bit of a perspective of how these rate hikes have played out. So now if we go back in time and look at back in March, where we got the first rate hike, again, this was a 0.25% rate hike. As you can see that this rate hike didn't result into a higher Canadian dollar. But later on, we saw a nice recovery because the expectation for further rate hikes start to build up. So notice that even before we got this rate hike of 0.5%, we saw the price action start to move upwards. So there was a lot of momentum start to get built. And on the news, we actually did break out further higher because the expectation again was for Bank of Canada to raise rates further. That again continued on, as you can see, back in May as well. We got a rate hike here at 0.5%, and the Canadian dollar actually had a massive rally. So as we continue to see this price action, now what we are seeing is a bit of a slowdown, where in the last two meetings, we have seen the rate has gone up by 1.75%, but the Canadian dollar really hasn't gone anywhere. Again, this is a Canadian dollar basket, so looking at Canadian dollar equally weighted with other major currencies. So Canadian dollar clearly has not gone anywhere, and this is where it's not trending whatsoever. So going to tomorrow, it doesn't seem like this next percent rate hike is really going to cause a big move. But on the contrary side, I think if the guidance is not as strong and they're expecting maybe for a smaller rate hike in December, I think Canadian dollar does have a little bit more chance to kind of sell on the news. So remember, it's not the rate hike, it's the guidance that really going to make a difference. So tomorrow, we not only have the rate hike at 10 a.m., we also have the Bank of Canada press conference as well. So one of the things to watch out for, especially if you're looking for a breakout, it needs to really break out of that resistance to really form a further rally. But if we don't see that, right now it's a flat price action. It's pretty much a coin toss here that it can go one way or the other. But if it breaks this level here, I think that's where we can start to see more traction within this trade. It's not a whole lot of action going on. It's very difficult to get excited about this Canadian dollar. But as a trader, what we need to do is need to prepare ourselves for both case scenarios. What if the Canadian dollar is stronger and what if the Canadian dollar is weaker? And also, what's your bias? I personally like Canadian dollar more on the short side than the long side. But again, we have to be prepared. If there's a good opportunity in the short term, it doesn't matter which way it moves. We'll take advantage of that. So the Canadian dollar, we got a bit of a mixed outlook here, and I think we probably will look for this either for the upside or the downside. Again, the trend is not strong, so we can actually take either side by not really going that much against the trend. So what pairs can we really look at for those trades? So this is where we need to break down all the other currency baskets and see, okay, where we can see the direction. On a daily chart, we can see that the dollar is actually pulling back a little bit. So again, that's a bit of a bearish sign for CAD as well, because the dollar CAD has really actually done really well. CAD has piggybacked from the dollar strength, and you can actually see that difference when you take a look at currency pairs like Kiwi CAD. I mean, you can see it just started off this year at about 87.42 level. So if you go from the highs of this level here, this is January here, and looking at this level here, I mean, that's a 10% drop in just Kiwi CAD. Again, these are the correlated currencies that don't really move as much. And you can see that these had massive moves. Same thing, Aussie CAD, where it was to where it is now. I won't be surprised if we probably be looking at the same thing here. Again, 5.5-6% move. Kiwi CAD definitely looks the worst, but again, this is where CAD has actually relatively done really well against a lot of the major currencies. So let's talk about what we can pair with. Now, when we take a look at currency baskets, we already kind of have a bit of an idea. Okay, what's performing well and what's performing underperforming. So we can actually kind of pair things accordingly. Right now, again, dollar is pulling back a little bit. Let's go down to the yen. Yen actually is finding some sort of short-term support. Again, not a currency that's easy to play right now. But again, let's take a look at CAD yen as well. Now, Swiss franc is just hanging off a thread right here on the 50-day moving average. So we don't really like Swiss franc on the long side. Now, euro. Now, that's something we like on the long side. So we need to pair euro against the CAD. Now, pound. Pound actually started to look decent here as well. So we can look at pound against the CAD. And on the other side, if we can also take a look at if the Australian dollar breaks out above this 20-day moving average, I can take a look at Aussie CAD and look at Kiwi CAD here, or Kiwi in general is starting to make a bit of a run to the upside. We are above the 20-day moving average, below the 50-day moving average, but it has the potential. So let's break down those currency pairs. Let's start with Kiwi CAD. You can see that the Kiwi CAD is kind of similar to what the the Kiwi basket is doing. Is kind of stuck in between the 20 to 50. I think if it breaks above the 78.80 level, this has a lot more potential to run because there's not a whole lot of overhead resistance. I mean, the massive support that we had was at about 79.76. This is sitting at 78.20. So there's a decent run we can have off this if we can break out that resistance. So Kiwi CAD will go on the list, especially if the CAD actually weakens. Now, Aussie CAD, let's take a look at that technical. Very choppy technical setup here, right around the 20-day moving average. But again, same thing, break out above it. The next level of resistance is 88.30. So Aussie CAD, Kiwi CAD, we'll take a look at it, especially on the CAD weakness and if the relative strength continues in the Aussie and the Kiwi. We can also now take a look at CAD against Euro. So you can see that this thing is trending up very nicely here. So the Aussie pairs and the Kiwi pairs, it seems like a long shot right now. But the things that are already working is something like Euro CAD. We're already above the moving averages, making a nice little range here, ascending triangle. A further break above that 136 area, I actually have a lot more upside potential on this one. Now, again, take a look at where this Euro CAD has come from. Starting this year at this level right here to where it is right now. I mean, that's a 6.5% move. So I think at this point, this can easily get towards that 38 level. So there's a decent level for this, above the 20, above the 50. We can also take a look at pound against the CAD. As you can see that there's very similar pattern here. The 20-day moving average is rising. And I think the trend is sort of kind of turning here for the short term, getting towards that 160 area as well. So those are the four pairs that we'd like as the Canadian dollar weakness. Now let's talk about what if the Canadian dollar is strong. Let's pair against CAD against Swiss franc. I mean, this is a pair that I would say, I like the Swiss franc short here, and you can see right now the CAD Swiss franc is just flatlining a little bit here. Massive drop in volatility here, but right now it's sitting at right at the 50-day moving average. A further break above that 73.30 area can actually expose the 75 area. So there's a decent risk to reward on that as well. So how about dollar CAD? Well, dollar CAD again is doing very similar to what the dollar is doing. The basket again is moving lower a little bit. So I think at this point, this thing in between the 20 to 50 day moving average. If this breaks below further, I think that 134 is an easy target. For that, again, it's a messy chart, 4-hour chart. You can see the moving averages are not that easy to read, or a lot of mixing back and forth. But if it breaks below this 135, I think there's a lot more further downside risk there as well. Now, lastly, let's take a look at CAD. Let's take a look at CAD yen. And CAD yen is, it's a lot of volatility here on a 4-hour chart here. Let's go on the daily chart. So CAD yen is sitting right between the 110 versus the 106 at the bottom here. So not really a big fan of the CAD yen right now because of, again, not really sure where the yen is heading to. I don't really love the yen short, but it's hard to go yen long right now. So again, that's what really breaks it down to. On the long side, for the CAD, we can compare it to the CAD Swiss franc. You would even take a look at dollar CAD. On the other side, we have Euro CAD, Pound CAD, Aussie CAD, and Kiwi CAD. So there's definitely a better, more picks that we have when we take a look at the currency. If we want to take a look at the currency on the downside risk. So right now, like I said, this is a very sideways trade. So this could start slowly, but again, expect a movement off of this, and hopefully we can get out of this little sideways trend that we have been in for the last few months. So tune in tomorrow. We'll keep an eye on it, and then we'll take a look at it and make a trade accordingly. Thanks, everyone. Happy trading. See you tomorrow.